Okay, we're live. We've had internet issues here and there, so if it pops up, we'll just hang out for it to go away because it does seem like it's working all right. Got a few people in the chat already. Thanks for being here, everyone. Cam, Simply Green, Aldir. I'm here with Jared, aka House of Tosis, co-creator of Hotel Story, artist of Hotel Story, and we're closing the campaign forever tomorrow night. There'll be kind of a fun bash, and I think Jared will be there for that too. But that'll be like the creative block slash closeout stream, a little bit longer than usual, even maybe possibly with some drinking. Possibly Kelsey Shannon might make an appearance. So like some good like I don't know, a good lineup. So that'll be a lot of fun. Nicholas Greer, what's up, man? Um, and yeah, so for now we're just hanging. I'm going to pull up the campaign. Just kind of this is like I'm calling it the pre-close. I just want to let everyone know it's closing. Me and Jared are going to hang out and chat about this and that. We didn't even have too much planned, but one thing I was going to say right away, Jared, is we've talked behind the scenes about like what type of like art has like a big fan movement and that we could draw fan art of to promote Hotel Story. And we were thinking like different things come up, but what was the Pizza Tower was one, and it's kind of fun to look at all the Pizza Tower fan art. It's like and it comes up and down. But you know another one? There's one called like Pseudomania or something like that. Do you know what that one is?
What
I
was that?
might be.
Pseudo regalia?
Yeah, Pseudoregalia. Have you checked that one out?
I mean, I've heard about it. I haven't really looked a whole lot into it.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of some Let's Plays of it, and it's like not exactly. I was gonna say like Tomb Raider. It's not exactly like Tomb Raider. But it's like yeah, like furry Tomb Raider mixed with Mario 64 or something. And but it's pretty cool, and the character designs are cool, and it's like I don't know, like me and Jared got like a sort of whole vibe that we go for, and then that overlaps like a Venn diagram with other stuff, and definitely like the kind of Dreamcast, Nintendo 64 era, low poly 3D, slightly more cartoony mascot style stuff is always inspirational and fun. And Pseudo Regalia is like kind of in that realm as well. You've been into a little bit into Sonic Adventure 2, right? That's like your latest.
Right. Yeah. So I've like, I guess like the last like week or so, like I've been kind of like redabbling in some of like the older Sonic titles. But yeah, it's just like a little bit of Sonic Adventure 2, a little bit of Sonic Rush, some of the some of the old Genesis games. But yeah, like just kind of revisiting them.
Yeah. Cam says, I waited for the end to back, but there you go. Oh, did you just back Cam? Thanks, man. Cam, are you Cam on Twitter too? Because that's a good connection. If you're Cam on Twitter, it like defended me during some drama last week, so I appreciate it. Um, oh, he says yes, I think so. Nice, or he just backed it. Maybe he's saying yes to that. I don't know, but yeah, Praetor Seven says Metroidvania. What are so of the I got an anecdote about Sonic is I got a buddy who has a kid he has three children. One of them is like a 3-year-old boy, and he uh plays video games, but I think he's so young. I think he pretty much just plays Infinite Runners, a lot of those type of games. And they have those of Mario and Sonic, and those are his two favorite games that he plays is Mario and Sonic. So I asked him, I was like, who do you like more, Mario or Sonic? And he thought about it for like 30 seconds and he goes, I can't decide. So whatever. It's the kids like them both. And it's kind of funny because it feels like Mario would destroy Sonic, but Sonic always holds his own. So I don't know like what that means, but yeah. Um what are so with your looking into some Sonic stuff? Are there any like I don't know, takeaways? Like, is the 2D stuff cooler than the 3D, or like which one's your favorite?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, like I I did grow up playing. I had a copy of Sonic 2, like, or at least my brother, like he had, like my brother was the one that had the Genesis, and he had a copy of Sonic 2. So I mean, that was my first, experience with that game. So I could say I could say that I might lean more towards like the 2D gameplay. Um, a lot of people say that the 3D platforming part, or that the 3D Sonic games aren't as good. Like whether it could be a case of just like unrefinement, or just like, or like it was they were being developed like in the early days of 3D game development. So it's hard to say, but there's aspects of the 3D games like that are they're also enjoyable, and like a lot of people, uh, there's a lot of fans of the 3D games. So I mean, there's got to be something there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been watching some of the Let's Plays of Sonic Adventure 2, and it is cool, all the style and stuff. The For the closeout tomorrow, it's part of the creative block, so there has to be like a for that discussion, which will only be like a side thing if we need it really, but it's like we do presentations that are like PowerPoints, and it'll be about like storytelling or whatever. And tomorrow the topic is going to be formulas, and that kind of applies to like Sonic. I'm like, what is the Sonic formula? One funny thing about it too, we were talking about this actually, I think on Creative Block, but it's that in the early days of Sonic on TV, there were almost like two versions that could never overlap. They were so different, and it was there was the cartoon that was more like Looney Tunes or whatever. It was like in the desert, Sonic just running around, living on an island in the desert or something was one, and then the other one was like not cyberpunk revolution against Robotnik was like the other one. Are you familiar with those two shows?
Yeah, yeah. There's also another one called Sonic Underground, where there's like I don't remember exactly, like it's not a good show. Or at least that's what I hear, because like I've never seen an episode of it, but like the plot is something to do with like there were a bunch, like, what was it, like it was either you know what, like there's gonna be someone that knows a lot more than I do, and they're gonna get like really frustrated with me if I get stuff wrong. So I'm just gonna I'll just keep it at that.
Oh, that there is another show though. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Of
there's
those versions from the 90s, did you have a preference? Do you prefer like cartoony island Sonic, or do you prefer cyberpunk revolution Sonic?
the only one that I ever really got a chance to see like a few episodes of was the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, like the cartoony one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other one, the cyberpunk one, it had a whole other slew of characters that I don't know if they've ever shown up in any other like versions of Sonic. They're like
They've shown,
it's
they've
what were you
shown up
saying?
they've shown up in the Archie comics, and that's a whole Pandora's box of stuff there.
Yeah, and then from the Archie comics, it gets into fan comics, and I guess there's like super famous ones of that are weird. Like I forget what it's called, but there's something like Tails
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 gets
troll Tails gets trolled. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw just one YouTube about that. Are you more familiar with that one?
I mean, I think I'm about as familiar with it as you are, but I mean, I've read like the first three chapters of it. And I am inclined to say that it's like one of the best comics ever conceived.
Yeah, it has like the X factor, but that's one where it. I think if you take it as a whole, you're like, damn, this is amazing. But if you look at one page or even read the first chapter, I don't know, does it pull you in right away, or is it like the kind of thing like, what TV shows? They're like, you got to watch the first three seasons, and then on the fourth season, it's like the best thing you've ever seen. Is it kind of like that?
I think so. I would say so. Yeah. I mean, like it. I mean, it like it just like the inciting incident. It just happens right away. You know the titular tails getting trolled, and then it just like and then it just like races off onto its into its own.
Yeah, I need to
Uh,
actually read it because I'm curious, like if it opens up, like what tricks does it is it using that why people respond? I think it opens up like a lot of lore. I think it doesn't it does at times get like it takes its time to get like introspective. It'll let characters like just have long conversations and think a lot, which is kind of fun. But
I mean, part of it is just it's totally like an outsider art kind of piece. It's just like a bizarre examination inside the head of like this outsider artist. Using these established characters to tell like this very
yeah,
unique story that only this person can tell.
yeah, I see. So it's like you can't fake that. It's like it could be considered like so bad it's good, like similar like that.
Right.
Like the movies that are like that. There's a few of those movies that's funny though, is like I don't know, like I did watch The Room, Tommy Wiseau's The Room. I really didn't like it and I thought it was super boring. But then people were saying like, no, you gotta I was like, why what the part about it is so bad that it's good though? Like because you can watch clips of the best of and you're like, okay, that is so bad it's good. That's amazing. But that's like 2 or 3 minutes max, and the movie is like 2 hours or whatever. So you're just like so bored for the whole movie. They just repeat scenes. It's kind of funny like how bad the writing is. You kind of feel like he was like, shit, it has to be longer. What should I do? I'll have them sitting on the couch again. And they'll have whole scenes of them kind of saying hi on the couch because they Brian Kreischow might know a lot. He's in the chat about this actually. He might be able to defend it. But people say they say you got to see it in a theater with people, then the kind of the magic happens. So the sometimes the so bad it's good is like a little hard to like you're like, okay, is it actually so bad it's good or is it just really bad or whatever? And I'm also curious about that when Tails gets trolled. It might be like actually pretty good. I don't know. But by the way, we got 23 people watching. Thanks everyone for being here. Yeah, Amanda B, everyone, Brian Kreischow. He is what movie are you talking about? I was talking about The Room, Brian Kreischow. There's another one that's so bad it's good. It's called Verotica. It's made by a musician. He made like one movie and it's supposedly it's so bad. But then he made another movie and again, I think it's like so bad it's good. Everyone's talking about it. It's out now. It's like kind of new now. I forget what it's called, but my friend he was telling me he wants to see it because he's like it's about a city that to even enter the city you have to give a blood sacrifice of like a virgin. Then they let you into the city. So it's like people showing up at the walls with a virgin, murdering them, and then entering the city. It was like how it starts. I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of creative, I guess. Boombot says Neil Breen is great. If you like that type of movie, check out Tito Ortiz in Robot Apocalypse. Brian Kreischow, Veronica is awful. Straight up Ed Wood. Yeah. Yeah. The part of the key for all that is it has to be you just can't do it on purpose. I wondered what that would be like too, is if you tried to do it on purpose. I think that can kind of be like usually pretty cringy and almost I want to say it's like never good, but maybe there's an example. And maybe there's an example of someone trying to do it on purpose, but still having tons of blind spots, and then that becomes hilarious. So who knows? That might be what like my shit. If my shit were ever to be declared so bad it's good, it's like that. It's like triple flip. It's like double self aware accidentally, and then that becomes cringy, something like that. Brian Kreischow. The thing I find fascinating about The Room uh, is that if The Room were made that way on purpose, we would call the director a genius. Yeah, yeah. So that's a good way to put it. It's like, I guess you do see movies sometimes where the director's like, I'm going to take a deliberately ridiculous approach to this, and that's kind of like, like French New Wave or whatever, and it's like amazing. But somehow they like they were still keeping it real entertaining, but they were effing with everything. Um, that's one thing too that it's kind of cool. It's Steven Spielberg. He gave like advice in an interview once. They're like, "What advice would you give to a young filmmaker?" And he said, "Just don't be boring," something like that. I was like, "That's hilarious," because it's at first glance you're like, "You asshole, that's like so broad. Thanks a lot, asshole." Like that's not advice at all. But then it's if you do take it like almost like at face value, even it's freeing. What he's trying to do is free you. He's kind of saying the subtext. I think it could be like, don't worry about following any rules. Don't worry about like 3x structure, hero's journey, any of that stuff, because all that will do is hold you back. Just don't be boring. Um, and I don't know. We've talked a little bit about that. I feel like you're definitely tapped into some of that with your creative endeavors. Um, let me ask you about that. What do you know? Like, are you? Because even when we first met, you were writing and drawing your own stuff, and it was always kind of weird, which I really liked. But are you influenced by like specific things, and that's one reason how you step outside the box a little bit? Or I've heard some people they will be influenced by like music instead of stories, and then that ends up creating weird stories. Do you do anything like that?
Um, it's hard to say because like that, that like what we met like what around 2013, I think. So it's like 2013, 2014. So this is like looking back at like 10 years ago. So I mean, I don't even remember what I was working on at the time. If I like, because I know like I didn't have like a main thing I was working on, but as far as like influences, yeah, I was definitely like listening to more music and yeah, like different different music at the time, like maybe like some like I don't know, there's a weird mix of influences around that time, I guess. um Especially because this was around the time I was like in my third like my I would say it was like my third year of college, because because I had taken my first 2 years in a community college and then transferred over to the to the other university. So, um, but so having whatever was going on around me. But yeah, definitely music was a big, cause, especially because like at the time like I was kind of focused more on doing music too, because I like because originally when I joined the game development group, like the student organization that did game development, I was originally trying to join in as a composer for that. So, and then like my focus kind of switched over to music to art uh because no one was really like requesting a musician, so I wasn't really getting a chance to contribute that much. And then like one of the artists kind of dropped out of one of their projects, so I filled in, and then I wound up doing more of that. And also I was getting more recognition for some of the art related stuff that I was doing for my classes at the time. So
Yeah, and even musically, you're kind of influenced somewhat by like that same era of like the video game type music. This is me kind of sort of guessing, and you can kind of correct me, but and that would influence the art too. So it's kind of circular, but it is like a great combination to be creative with music and um, like visual arts at the same time. I think that there's a few funny combinations that come up like in history. And one of them is to be an athlete and be an artist is always like a good combination for whatever reason. I don't know exactly why, but like Frank Frazetta is a great example. He was almost a pro baseball player, but I think he could have been, but he didn't want to be at that point. He was doing painting or whatever. But it kind of helps you with understanding like form and doing action and stuff. And but being a musician and being a visual artist also. And I know one obvious, like maybe a potentially obvious example is Toby Fox, who did Undertale. That's like a video game, but Undertale has a really cool, fun visual design, and then it also has awesome music. But I don't know, yeah, like even if how music can potentially influence story like directly. I know Brendan Swan uh, says that he's kind of influenced a little bit more by music rather than stories. And like music has like verse, chorus, that kind of stuff. So that would be different than like a three act structure. That would be one example. Another way that it could play out is like is music has more of a flow to it where like this is something I could almost relate to a little bit is like I've wondered if you could do a scene out of nowhere and ramp up the stakes and emotional investment. Like how fast can you possibly do it? Basically, can you do it without any setup from 0 to 100 and have people care? And that's like music is like a little bit more like that, whereas story is more like construction and building, and music is like getting into the flow right away and hitting that crescendo and building off itself just within the scene. More like it's almost more like the way it influences scenes is like uh, really valuable as far. But I don't know exactly about the if you zoom back for the overall structure. Um, were you ever thinking about like structural storytelling type stuff at that point, or and do you like take influence? Oh, yeah, I'll leave you with that. I have one more after this, but yeah,
I mean, I, I, I most likely would have like as far as like storytelling, you know, I was familiar with, a little bit with like what was a three act structure if I like because like I'm familiar with like the you know like the sort of like screenplay for like writing structure for that. So I mean, like I would have had some like I'd imagine I would have had some of that in mind for like whatever like if I was working on a comic at the time. Like I don't think I was doing too much sequential work in 2013. I think I was mainly focused on like just like one-off illustrations and stuff. Um, but yeah, I either that or just like I guess like I was doing more like trying to do more comedic writing, like trying to do see if I could come up with something that kind of stuck with that. But yeah, I
yeah.
think go ahead.
Oh, that's like a whole other like art form that's cool, and that's like some animation like dabbles in that some animation influence. I was gonna say though for influence, uh, another kind of conversation I've had here and there lately is like is everyone has influences, but we're kind of in an era where influences are a little bit inbred, and this is something I think you might have avoided too. But you kind of want to go back to the beginning for influences if possible, or at least be aware of that. So like being influenced by a lot of people say like David Lynch is like a huge influence. That's not necessarily the greatest because David Lynch, he's influenced by like kind of normie shit from the 50s and 60s that was just really good. And then from that, he got his crazy stuff. And if you're influenced by him, you're kind of skipping the normie stuff. Um, and then it you kind of can be missing some of the foundational kind of cool things that David Lynch will still hit. So he kind of has an advantage at that point to take. It's like if you want to get weird, you kind of take weird stuff. You take normal stuff and then make it weird, rather than taking weird stuff and making it weird. But I know one of your potential influences too is like Franz Kafka. We would kind of have that in common a little bit. We like both read a fair amount of him, and what that's one we have the unreleased Pixel comic of the trial, just like the first chapter or whatever is kind of sitting in the backlogs as an experiment, and it turned out pretty cool. But we might one day release it, but for now it's just kind of sitting there. But I don't know. Do you have any influences like that? Like Franz Kafka might be one. Are there any others like I don't know, like Bukowski or any like writers or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. Like I've read a few different Dostoevsky stories, like mainly like I've read Crime and Punishment at least a couple times through, and then notes Notes from the Underground. I've read I guess like more recently I've read some James Joyce, so that might be a little too recent to be an influence, but and
Mm.
then the Dharma Bums, which is a kind of which is a it's a it's a Kerouac story, but like the edition that I got, I mentioned this to you not too long ago, but the edition I had had cover art done by a Norwegian artist called Jason. So like that was kind of a and I found out about that book because I saw one of my classmates reading the Dharma Bums just like on his free time. So that caught my attention, and I got interested in that book, and then also like looking into more into Jason and his comics.
Yeah, and that's more of a mod. That's like a reprint of the book, which is an
Right.
older book, has the more modern cover, which is a cool combination, a cool way to kind of rediscover like new artists, kind of the hip uh the hip underground comic style or whatever. But you did show me some of the art, and it was pretty sweet. Um, yeah, yeah. So that's cool. I think that's cool. Like I don't know, that's like kind of inspiring too. I'm like, shit, I need to read some Dostoevsky or some of that Russian, some of the badass Russian stuff.
Right.
Um, yeah, Henry Bemis says Dharma Bums is much better than On the Road, in my opinion. And Brian Kreisgau says it's like with Picasso. He learned to be a proper painter before he became the cubist. We all know you have to learn the rules before you break the rules. Yeah, and like if people are influenced by Picasso, it's a little it's kind of the same thing. It's like a trap, sort of, because then they would not be influenced by what he was influenced by to even make him great in the first place. I'm sure there might be like exceptions or whatever, but it does feel like something you got to kind of watch out for. And you can kind of, we've talked about this though, you can kind of curate your influences. And if you're like a little bit picky about them, that's kind of like a good thing, I think. Like for a while now, I've kind of had a little rule, but I don't know. I might, I'll break it here and there, and I might eventually dispense with it. But my rule is like I don't watch TV. I only watch movies, and that helped me a lot with like specifically like longer, a little bit longer. The rising action of the middle act was one of the most challenging things for me to figure out structurally. So not even exposing myself to like shorter versions of 3 act structure, only movie length version. And one thing I remember, like little things you pick up, but it's the kind of the midway point with movies, is always a big structural point, and you can kind of feel it when you're pretty much watching any movie. Almost like it happens, I think, a lot of times accidentally. Like it's not like they even necessarily plan it, but you could feel like, oh, this is like the middle, and you pause and you just see on the little Netflix like player where the red bar, how far it is, and it'll be like in the middle, and you're like, damn, like that always happens. Um, and so that kind of stuff is kind of valuable to pick up. But yeah, and even in your case though, it's like Dostoevsky being an influence, that's gonna like play out in really cool ways. It combos really well with your kind of cartoony style too, which that reminds me, I have a little segue, but uh, any like specifically, like is there something about Dostoevsky that you think helps your story, or as an influence, or like, or even Crime and Punishment specifically?
Um, that is hard to say.
One you might have told me once about the main character being kind of interesting or something, but I kind of forget.
Um, yeah, like I might stumble a bit if I like kind of talking about it, but like he's like this because like he's set up as like he's a former law student who's like he's on hard times. He hasn't been in school for a while now. He's kind of struggling to make ends meet, and he's been pawning stuff to this landlady, or yeah, or I think, or see, I'm already starting to mix up certain things, but he's been pawning off stuff to this kind of wretched woman like who no one really likes, and he's been kind of like he's had uh these ideas of just like straight up, of murdering her because, like he feels justified in doing so because like not only is she, taking advantage of him and taking advantage of other people, and like, there's she it could be said that she's objectively a terrible person, and it's like there's almost like there's almost like the net positive of getting rid of this person pretty much like almost outrules like the crime in itself. So that's kind of like that's how the plot of the plot of the book starts off, and he goes through with it, um you know and so at this point he's, eventually the guilt starts to catch up with him, because another part of him is that like one of his papers that he had written as a student was the idea of there being like extra, well, there's like the ordinary person and then the extraordinary person,
Mhm.
people who are able to, to do these kinds of things, and like whether they're justified or not, like there's like
Yeah, that's like a Nietzsche thing too, right? But that would have been later that Nietzsche was talking about that Ubermensch or whatever. I don't know.
right. And like I get like part of you know part of Raskolnikov's character is that he kind of thinks of himself as trying to be as this extraordinary person, although towards the end of the book, it does come up like he's really not this extraordinary person. He's not like a cold-blooded killer. He really is just a normal person, and he's experiencing like these huge pangs of guilt, especially with uh the inspector that's kind of playing cat and mouse with him. uh so like that's just like, and like, he'll event like he like and how he deals with the guilt, and like what like, I don't necessarily need to spoil the book, but he like, I don't know. I guess I can end my thought there.
Yeah. No, I mean that sounds awesome though. That is it at all like American Psycho, or is that way different? Do you know American Psycho?
I actually haven't watched that, or I haven't read the book. Uh, so I'm not
Yeah.
like I'm
I
obviously I'm familiar with the character, but
Yeah,
um,
American Psycho's like memed. It's funny because it had a second life as like a meme movie, like exactly 20 years after its release, it like exploded, and I think now it's like it's iconic and like immortal now. But it wasn't for a while, but it totally has found new life as kind of the meme kind of thing, basically. But the I wonder if Crime and Punishment has anything like that. But it is kind of relatable to see like people can kind of justify anything, and person who thinks they're smart, they can kind of justify that they're smart so they can like sort of have a circular logic to pump themselves up to justify anything, even though they shouldn't be doing that, which is like definitely fascinating. Um, but yeah, I don't know even just getting in. Obviously, everything you described sound extremely psychological. This is something I've realized like lately too. That's like a good focus for storytelling in general. Is like there's things people will say that you need a good theme, or you need conflict, blah blah blah. I'm sure that's all true, but one of the fun things that you can really get is if you get kind of like a psychological charge, which usually just means like oftentimes it has to be like relatable, which kind of just means identifiable. Because if the reader can identify it, then they can relate to it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to even identify it. And it'll be like that. Like in the case of Crime and Punishment, it's like I can kind of identify like, oh yeah, you can kind of like work yourself up and use like sort of fake logic to in a circular thing to kind of justify anything, and how that that can come crashing down too potentially. And I remember even with filmmaking, I worked on a short film once, and the the short film did not turn out good, but we were all on the set thinking it was going to be great. So I was kind of like, damn, what happened? And I remember the director being like, all right, we're going to shoot like from behind here, and then for this next shot we're going to turn and it's going to be like a reveal. And so he's like justifying every shot, and you're like, oh yeah, a reveal, nice, dude, this is going to be badass, it's going to be a reveal. So it's like you literally can justify anything, say why it's going to be good, like you can put it in words, convince everyone. But then when the actual movie gets made, you put it together, you're like, a reveal, what the hell did we reveal? Like, it's the reveal is just like a new shot, like it's not like the audience is there like, ooh, new information, so happy for the, what will I do with this new information? Like, that can be a thing that happens with storytelling, but I don't know. So it's kind of like trying to identify and almost be skeptical of like what words can do. Words can like justify anything, kind of. So these things that you think will work, that's a Napoleon quote. I think he goes, what works in theory does not always work in practice. And just being kind of skeptical of theory, like, trust me, it's going to work. You're like, yeah, but I don't know. And also trying to identify like, okay, what actually works? Like what, so the reveal did not work. I think what would actually work is like psychological charge actually works. A strong conflict, high stakes. Stakes and conflict go kind of hand in hand, and conflict's even better the higher stakes you got. You know, something funny about stakes though is like they can get pretty high, and so it can be like life or death. But that's not exact. It's like psychological is kind of what makes them higher. Like making it so you go like, what's higher stakes than life or death? Well, will the world die or not is supposedly higher stakes than that. That's kind of like an illusion. It's like, even you could go even down, like, so like, will like the team win the championship game, the high school boys basketball team? That can be higher stakes than life or death, depending on like the context or whatever. So the thing that you're ramping up, one of the things is kind of just like rooting for versus rooting against, and that's kind of what the stakes are. So like, yeah, it can be life or death. That's less important than how much are you rooting for the good guy, how much are you rooting against the bad guy. And I don't know. As I say that, I wonder though, because like I've been guilty of doing stories where it's not even necessarily like that, where it's like a little bit more ambiguous, which can potentially be okay. But that's like if it's rock paper scissors, say, like, and you kind of like everyone, and you're just like, well, shit, who's gonna win? Like that can kind of work too. And in that case, yeah, how the stakes are implemented would be interesting. Like maybe in that case, you just want to be rooting for everyone, but you have to be rooting for people. Like if you're not rooting for people, then you wouldn't really have the stakes. Shadowpunk says they turned Napoleon into a weak, non-charismatic man. Oh, in the new movie. Yeah, who directed that? He's super famous, but he's super old now. He's one who he has a silver tongue and he can justify anything, and then you're like, yeah, but it sucked though. Except he's made obvious classics. Ridley Scott, Shadowpunk says, yeah, Ridley Scott. Yeah. 20 people watching. Thanks everyone for being here. Hotel Story, the closeout. We're closing tomorrow at midnight. So we got 2 more days. There's a few things I want to talk about too before we kind of get out of here, is like talk specifically a little bit about Hotel Story. But a thing that's kind of been on our minds recently is the mini comic. So the mini comic originally, I found this out, I kind of misremembered, but originally it was for the secret tier, but I moved it so it's for everyone. And I'm going to give the secret tier something else special. So they still get the exclusive. They still get it's a few bucks off for the combo tier. It still saves a little money. So the secret tier is still cool. And that link's floating around too, if people are like want it or whatever. But the mini comic. So I'll make this big. So the plan is, the mini comic turned out so cool, I do want to just give it to everyone. It's a great idea for a bonus for a campaign too. And this mini comic turned out pretty well. It's like you could call it a deleted scene, but it's kind of fun. Like it's like it adds a lot of lore to Salome. And I did get an email because I showed it a little bit on the Creative Block a while back, and I got an email from someone being like, "I want to know so much more about the prequel now. I want to know." I haven't told you this yet, Jared, but this was cool. They're like, "I want to know how the family died. I don't want to know. I want to know if there are other witches. I want to know the deal. I want to know what happens next. Did she get revenge?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's a whole prequel implied by the mini comic." And sometimes it's fun to leave it implied, but I'm like, we could dabble more. And for part 2, we'll probably want to do another mini comic, but I don't know what that will be yet. We've joked about some lore surrounding Hotel Story, and this is something about the format of the mini comic. Is I'm going to make my screen big for just a second. I think, can I do this? Yeah, so cool. Is the mini comic can be like more trite in a fun way. Like it can be lower than a deleted scene. Like this is like a deleted scene. Like so, it's like cool. It adds to the lore. But we were joking that it'd be cool if there were 2 of the front desk agents, and the concierge kind of had a love triangle, love rivalry kind of thing going on. And that's not in the story, but we were just joking about it. I'm like, we could totally do a mini comic about that. And yeah, you could call it a deleted scene, but it's like, it's, the word, I don't know if the word's trite or whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter, but it's still fun. Like the mini comic is perfect for stuff like that, for these bonuses. And yeah, so like the way it works is, what we're going to give you guys is you get an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. It prints out like this, all on one side. There's a dotted line in the middle there, so it prints out like that, upside down on one side, right side up on the other. And the pages are numbered, so it's like there isn't even going to be instructions, but it's super easy. So the dotted line is just those 2 strips there. So you fold it like this, and then you can just cut the dotted lines. You cut the dotted line, and then it's just a matter of like you just fold it, and it kind of becomes a fan. And you got page 1 on this side, page 8 on this side, and then it's an 8-page comic, and the size is about like, like whatever. It's like about 1 panel per page, and you can sometimes do 2 panels, but then they have to be like close-ups or whatever. Like if you do 2 panels a page and they're both wide, it gets pretty small. But yeah, like 1 panel a page. So like almost as like an 8-panel story. You could think about it like 8 splash pages. But we split in some insert panels and some 2-panel pages. Usually the story has to be pretty simple. In some ways, like simpler than like a short story even, which is actually kind of fun too. Like the format, we did this. We did it pretty fast. Like it had been percolating. So I wrote the script, which is just an email I send to Jared with like the 8 splash pages. And then he did this like in a day and 2 days maybe. And then it's kind of done. We're like, man, that was kind of fun. Very creatively like fulfilling too. And Jared's done a few other mini comics in the past. And they turn out great too. They're always pretty great. They're just like a lot of fun. So I'm going to definitely try to include a mini comic basically in every campaign from here on out, I think, that I do. And I was thinking even about trying to do a mini comic campaign with just mini comics at some point. And I have a little idea. It would be like 1 story that is told through 8 mini comics that can be read in any order. and certainly in some orders that you read it, it would be more like Pulp Fiction. Like you'd be reading it technically out of order, but it would still be fun. And so that's like the idea. But even that, like, it's interesting because it's supposed to be pretty darn simple. Like 8 mini comics. And I have an idea. I might tell you behind the scenes, Jared, but I still got to kind of work it out. But that would be like a cool, and the overhead is like almost like negligible. It's literally just printed out an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that gets included just in the package. And once it's all folded up and turned into a comic like this, then it's just kind of this fun item. I think part of the fun too is like, this is just like my theory, I guess, but I think the audience will, the fans or the backers will really enjoy assembling it themselves, which means one snip and some folding is all it is. But it just kind of adds a little extra thing. And this I feel like some of the bonuses that come with comics, I end up kind of losing. Like bookmarks honestly are pretty useful, and I can use other stuff as bookmarks, even if it's like trading cards. Sometimes they end up like, at least in my case, they end up lying around. I might lose them, whatever. I might not know what to do with them. They're just kind of sitting there. The mini comics feel a lot more like I would like want to build a little box for them and put them all in a little box, and you could collect quite a few over the days. But the one thing, not just to like reiterate once, but not to repeat myself, but it is, I find it very fascinating how this changes, like the medium changes the storytelling. So like the way mini comics can only tell a certain kind of story. It's a little bit less than a short story almost, and that is like so fun. That you have to consider the medium, like the fact that it's pretty small. You can't do lots of panels per page. About one panel per page. You only got 8 pages. Like for this one, even like it starts and ends. It tells a little story, a little scene, a few exchanges, but there's a lot implied before and a lot implied after, and that we don't go into, and that's kind of deliberately meant to be that way, and that's kind of part of the fun. Some of the mini comics you've done, they've been extra abstract, which is another fun way to like embrace what the medium can do. They do kind of like what they encourage, like that kind of abstraction would be less encouraged in a regular comic, I think. But in mini comic, it's like, let's go for it. Specifically, too, you did one mini comic that turned out really good that we're going to try and make an animated short film of, because it actually had a cool mix of having a real story and some crazy abstract stuff. The way it mixed together was kind of with basically like humor, and it was a really cool like concoction. So that turned out great. And if I ever do the mini comic campaign, we can try and sell some of your mini comics too, or whatever, as bonuses. But that's kind of one thing I'm thinking.
Sure.
Angela Curry says Backer 313. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Angela. Angela, by the way, I know you're in the area of the Pacific Northwest. There's a convention, and Jolly Green is too. There's a convention called SquatchCon, March 21st to 24th, and I have a table at that. It's in Port Angeles, Washington. So you should think about coming to that, and we could all hang out or something. That'd be cool. Anyone in the area, anyone even in Jim Cox is like in the Pacific Northwest-ish, I think. So if you want to, everyone around, come on out to Port Angeles. Let's hang out. Depending if we get like a few people, we could definitely like have some fun. That'd be fun. People can crash on my couch if they need. And DLA says a scenario or smaller. I think smaller than a scenario. Scenarios are funny because they can be pretty big. Speaking of that, this segues a little bit into the pitch for Hotel Story. Hotel Story is like a scenario. Is like the story is a scenario. The scenario is a witch casts a mass sacrifice spell from the top floor suite of a hotel, and it's like that's the story. And that story is like 300 pages, so a lot happens. But that's kind of fun, like that kind of story. Like this has come up talking a little bit about like movies or cinema. It's like in some ways it's like, again, like almost like it's like a short story, or it's more like a short story than a novel. But one of the ways that it, like, how does it fill out the 300 pages? Well, there's a lot of psychological charge. You're worried about what everyone's thinking at any moment, what they're trying to do, their own little conflicts that they have going on. And then there's logistics of kind of the quote unquote the action of, well, how will they survive? There's a few rules of the magic going on and how they use that to their advantage to try and survive. And just one rule of magic can be applied in multiple ways, and it can be applied in ways that the audience doesn't see coming. So that's a big thing we try and do with Hotel Stories. Like, you can learn the rules of the magic pretty fast, but then it will play out in ways that you don't really foresee. Well, Red says, I want to do plot holes with Narwhal. We'll get to that in the near future and lead up to Zorro. Oh, have we not done that yet? Has plot holes not been discussed? I own that and read it. That's what I was saying at the time. I was saying it's so bad it's good, and I still might kind of classify it that way. But I honestly do like appreciate that book. I appreciate that it exists. But I also think Sean Gordon Murphy. I just keep waiting for him to really like knock it out of the park somehow. And maybe Zorro. I'm coming around a little bit on Zorro, even though it has it's the put a chick in it, make it gay supposedly thing with Zorro. But well, Red says I'm lazy and keep putting it off. A guy in his room. What's up? A guy in his room would love more of these horror type comics and CG. Yeah, yeah. Horror's definitely a fun genre. It's fun too because even within horror, there is like a ton of possibilities. Hotel Story is like it's of the type of horror. It's like the fun horror, but not in the way that it lowers the stakes. Like I'm trying to think if there's examples, but it's like life or death, and it's very gory. But it can be so gory that it's like almost funny, but it's not like lowering the stakes. Like the stakes are pretty high. Like nobody's joking about that the fact that this witch is trying to sacrifice an entire hotel. And with that too, there's kind of some fun intrigue of just like what's the nature of her deal, of what she's doing, who is she paying the accord to or whatever. All that stuff kind of comes up. And yeah, was I saying anything else? Oh, the Oval is the bonus book on this one. So Jared did that one, a solo Jared production. Did it last year. It turned out great. It's a 48 page. That's a horror comic too, a little different kind. That one I would count it more as like Silent Hill, ghost story, psychological, more like moody. It's got a little bit of like the abstract kind of stuff. But that one's a lot of fun. I really like that comic too. So the two of them put together is kind of two different kinds of horror, both drawn by Jared. It's a good intro to like Jared's whole vibe too. And then you get the mini comic too, which is cool. So definitely. And Jared, you might have more and more. I mean, you will have more and more eventually. Like you got some scripts you're writing now that are great, like kind of independent of working with me. We're working on a script together again too. We got Hotel Story Part 2. We got some animation that we're trying to work on together. So we're definitely staying pretty busy. And there's as much work that we can do that we can basically fit in, and as much that has like a response that people are appreciating. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts, Jared, about Hotel Story or anything in the process of like us working on it or writing it? I don't know. It's obviously that's a broad question.
I can't say I have any immediate thoughts. I mean, it like I'm glad I had the opportunity to work on to see this book from start to finish, and what's taken when we started at the end, like we started the script around summer of 2021, and then we started like a little bit of pre-production in the winter of 2021, and like I think actual production, like the first page was drawn in like January or February, I think. So it's like it's been a good couple years now working on it, and finally seeing it done after like all the edits and everything that we've done in the last few months. It's good. It's a good feeling.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad that you feel good about it. It is a great accomplishment. It's your first big, probably like big project, big book, and it's like that's the whole thing. Yeah, like dedicating 2 years of your life to see this through. And part of this too was that, like you mentioned, that the end, because we had it done like last September, but we sent it to multiple people to get feedback, and we had a whole process of based on the feedback of polishing it, making it more looking at clarity, readability, and fun factor of reading it, kind of improving some jokes here and there if people weren't laughing when we thought they should be. How can we make this funnier? All that kind of stuff. getting the more character, little character moments, trying to beef them up, everything, and that was another like 2 or 3 months even, and now it's just this like finished, polished product we're both very proud of. It is kind of like cinematic in the way I've kind of been describing of like it's just one night. It's like a matter of like the whole story spans like 4 hours or something, and it's 300 pages covering those 4 hours, um, which is like a little bit different, a little bit rare for comics to do that. Um, so that aspect of it is kind of fun. The idea that the story is pretty dang simple. It's just a matter of the fun action and survival and characters once things get rolling. Another kind of subgenre of what it might be too is like what's it called when it has like a lot of characters? They call that ensemble.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of an ensemble. And another one that kind of sometimes there's a subgenre, they call it the milieu movie. And milieu means like environment or something in like French maybe. So that, but that's like if the movie is about the place, and this like all takes place in the hotel. It does hit like the hotel like beats that you might think it would hit, the characters it might have, a front desk, a concierge, an elevator, a suite, stairs, a cool stairway, the foyer, main foyer, the pool, all that stuff plays into the story in fun ways. And then yeah, the characters, the ensemble aspect is fun too, where everyone, no matter who you're cutting to, they're doing something kind of fun and interesting, and they got something going on. Everyone has their own little mini story within the story. Some of them are kind of funny too. Like Gary is, we've talked about him before, but he's in the making of book. There's a little short story about him, about his origin. He I want to say he's like the Blogart of this story, but we don't know. Like we'll release it, we'll see like if he's a fan favorite or like maybe not because he's like a loser. But it's hilarious, and he's like this drunk guy who's like super nervous about meeting this what's the
Was it more
analog?
speaker or sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like Mallory in our story, she's like someone who does like the motivational speaking and goes on tours. Tony, what's the guy's name? People might know. Tony Robbins. Yeah, yeah. So she's like Tony Robbins. Gary is there to meet her, and he's super nervous, so he gets really drunk, and like all that stuff is like kind of tickles me. Like that whole subplot is pretty funny. Crowfire inspirational speakers. Dale A says, trying to think of a milieu movie, Grand Budapest Hotel. The best milieu movie that I can think of, it's Spike Lee, and it's called, what's it called? Do the Right Thing, if you guys know that movie. But that's all like one block in New York City on a hot summer day that racial tensions end up exploding. That movie's amazing. And yeah, that's this thing. It's got like a ton of characters, and they're just cutting between them all. Everything's happening. It's cool. Angela Gray TED Talk guy. Girlfire says Spike Lee's one good movie. That may be true. I don't know. That movie's great though. Shoot, 1 second. I'm getting a phone call. I just want to see who it is. Oh, it's Scam Likely. I know that guy. But yeah, so we're kind of wrapping up here. I just want people to know Hotel Story closing out tomorrow. Me and Jared will be back with, it'll be the creative block kind of show, but just with some special guests. We'll be talking formulas. We didn't even get to, I was going to maybe talk a little bit about that, you and me just here, but like what's the formula for Sonic the Hedgehog? We won't go just yet. Let me ask you that question. Can you think of what it might even be?
I would say about like 30% blast processing and then 70% autism.
See, that's like esoteric because at first people are like, that's useless to me. I can't actually recreate Sonic with with those ingredients. But then you're like, no, look deeper. You're like, oh, the world is unlocking before my eyes. I can recreate Sonic. I know the secret ingredient. It's autism. Yes, Gnarl needs to be manscaped. Yeah, maybe I will buy a manscaping, whatever it's called. deal. But yeah, thanks everyone for being here. And yeah, we're gonna get out of here. The links in the description. Hotel Story, get on board now. Um, Definitely a lot of fun stuff. Every product is pretty cool. Like there's the Opal is great, 48 pages, black and white, perfect bound. The making of, which is 64 pages, black and white, perfect bound. The making of is a lot of fun too, and it has the Gary Lore little short story. Every order is getting the mini comic, which is like really fun. I must say, like I'm really happy with how it turned out. Also, Jared's art just is really great, and it turned out great on the mini comic. Like it really works well at this size. Um, that would look amazing if you just blew it up. It would still look great. It loses nothing by being shrunken down. It's actually kind of the perfect size too. Um, and so yeah, the mini comic going to continue to explore this mini comic idea and keep maybe doing some mini comics here and there. Me and Jared both, and I want to do a mini comic for Grand Prix, Jared, because Grand Prix Part Two involves in part many things, but one of the things it involves is a genetically engineered giant banana, and I want to do a mini comic about the import export of the giant banana and the fact that it may or may not come in a box with a giant tarantula in it. And then like that would be like it might not even, again, the way many comics are, it's like you can't even tell the whole story. The punchline is just someone screaming giant spider, and then it ends or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, so figuring that out, it's those creative, like I don't know if I'd call them problems, but it is a lot of fun how the medium changes the ways that you can be creative and have to be creative. How the limits sort of make you more creative with these mini comics. So definitely, everyone, yeah, like you can get with this campaign, getting all three. You know, I recommend that, but it's you can get three Perfect Mountain books that are all great and fun, and a mini comic, which is it's. I think people will be very pleased. Hotel Story. This is part one of two, but it does. Part of the feedback was the editor said it didn't kind of wrap up conclusively enough for his taste. He's like it was almost too much of like truncated ending. And you're like, what now? So we actually went back. That was one of the things we did. We added kind of a new ending to really give it a full, nice feeling as a part one. And then part two, we're starting production on like next month. And it goes relatively fast. So this will probably part two will crowdfund either late this year or early next year. And the whole story will be out there. It'll be fun. It'll be like definitely for once it's done, you know, these big graphic novels, once they're done, they're there forever. And anyone can read them. Like Earthbound's like that now. Earthbound's like 300-page graphic novel that's like watching a movie. Anyone can buy it and read it at any point on my eBay store. People do. I still get feedback from people like saying how much they like it. Um, and yeah, the Hotel Story is going to be like that too. We're just kind of building this body of work of these books that are encouraged to be read in one sitting because we try to nail the narrative flow, the narrative drive, the structural narrative drive. Basically, if you get that, then you get everything. Then you get like that feeling that, and I think readers love that. They love that feeling when they're like, where did the time go? I just read this in one sitting. That's kind of always been my ultimate goal, trying to figure out how to do that. And a lot of it is like structural, which means, you know, characters, psychology, stakes. It means getting all that. It means like comboing it together well. But Hotel Stories like that. So this is something you guys can expect it to be like. This is a fun, uh, like pretty long, cool story about one crazy night at a hotel. We'll talk about it more tomorrow, a little bit here and there too. But also, Jared, it's good to stream with you and catch up, get people to know you a little bit better. Jared will be around. Like he's going to be making comics for the rest of his life too. I can't wait for you guys to see more of what Jared's been up to and what he's capable of. So, do you want to say anything, Jared, before we kind of wrap up?
Um, I mean, I'm glad that that I could be on, and then I'm glad that people are are here here listening to me ramble about about like profound
Sonic.
some dumb stuff, and you know um, you
Yeah.
know I'm I'm glad people are interested in the book.
Yeah. No, I think people want to know, yeah, what makes you tick. And like I do too. So it's cool. And yeah, it's fun. We'll continue to stream here and there. We'll try and do, maybe we did it a while back, but a kind of a stream where we draw a little bit too. We'll do some fan art or whatever. We'll maybe draw Pseudomania, draw some Sonic, whatever. Oh, and I do want to look into uh, Tails Gets Trolled and talk about that. Actually, I legit want to do that. Maybe we can even do that, like you and me both talk about it on a stream or something.
Sure. It could there could be like what is called like a read along or something. Or
Yeah, we could do something like that. Yeah, we'd read a little bit of it beforehand and then read some of it live. I don't know. Boombots is how big is the banana? You'll have to read the comic to see Boombots. That would be a spoiler if I say that, but it's big. Cool. All right, I'm gonna end the stream then. But yeah, thanks everyone for being here. 27 people watching. This went really well. Thanks everyone for hanging out. And yeah, good to see everyone in the chat. Chat a little bit about Hotel Story. Ends tomorrow, so I'll be in touch, and I'll see everyone later. And with that, I'm going to click the button. So see you.